evening and welcome back to the First Time Homebuyer Show. I'm your host, Esty Klassen. Purchasing your first property can be extremely daunting and stressful, but not to worry, we've got you. We're joined with Bianca Da Silva this evening, businesswoman, entrepreneur, as well as building her own property portfolio. Welcome, Bianca. How are you?
Hi, Esty. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here with you this evening.
Thank you so much for joining us, and I appreciate that you could, take a look back down memory lane and tell us what it was like, purchasing your first property, the experiences that you went through. And we all know, as whether you're doing a first time anything, that we all get that moment in life where you're just like, I wish someone had told me, or I wish I knew, or I wish I did more research. So I really appreciate that you're with us this evening and talking about what you wish you knew before purchasing your first property. And on the note of property, Bianca, why property? Why was property one of your first big investments?
You know what? I always had the view, like many other people do, that you need to have a lot of money before you buy property. It's a myth. It is not true. And I managed to realize that when I was lucky enough to be surrounded with some people that were in my company that managed to make quite a lot of money out of property. So as my usual self, I asked a lot of questions. Through asking those questions, I was invited to a few property seminars. And that's where I sort of saw the opportunity that you can build a property portfolio as myself, a single female with no help from anyone, no rich parents. I can do that on my own through investing the right way, leveraging bonds with certain banks, but obviously managing your affordability. And, sort of diversifying and owning something that's tangible, that you can see, touch, and feel, and that that there will be capital growth in the long term. So property is definitely a long-term investment. So that's something that I was willing to divulge in because I wanted something that was long-term. I wanted my money to work for me.
Right. And I love that you said that it's a myth. We don't have to be rich to invest in or to build a property portfolio in general. And on that note, Bianca, you said that you ask a lot of questions. So as Bianca, you're always asking questions, which is great because that's what we need to do, especially in the property game. How did you know that you were ready to make this investment?
I didn't know I was ready, if I'm honest with you. All I knew is that I wanted to purchase property, and come hell or high water, I was going to do that. And so I started attending more seminars, reading a lot of books, and then through obviously the private property website, doing the bond calculations, seeing what my loan to value ratio would be in terms of, okay, if I buy a property for R1 million, what will my bond repayment be every month? Can I afford it, etc. And sort of working that way. And then through that, getting a tenant to sort of pay a portion of the bond depending on the deposit I paid off, and then making my money work for me, as I said previously. So I was never ready, no. I just made myself.
You just had to be ready because you knew this was what you wanted at the time. So you knew that you needed to do certain things. And I was about to ask, what steps did you take besides seminars and doing your own research on the private property website? What other steps did you take to ensure that you were not only financially ready, but mentally ready as well to invest in all these properties?
I think the important thing is knowing, I had to do a lot of research myself, knowing where to buy, because a lot of the time, you can sort of get lost in translation with certain developers and estate agents that will tell you everything that you want to hear. So the steps I had to take was to take a step back actually and do my own research, find out where are the best areas, and also what can Bianca Da Silva as an individual afford. Based on that, I had to, accumulate my savings through various sort of avenues. I made the decision on one of the properties to actually take out a portion of some of my unit trusts. And so I had to allocate that to some of the deposits. And for me, the return I'm getting on that property way overpasses the interest that I would be earning on that investment, where I don't have control over the volatility in terms of the stock or the bond or whatever the case may be. So I allocated funds through other investments that I had at the time for certain properties as well.
Oh, nice. Because I think you get to a point where not necessarily that a property could be doing quite bad or you've invested and then maybe down the line you regret it, but there are certain steps that we can take to, it's almost like you're taking one property and you're reinvesting into it by taking from another investment, which is, and like you said, you're gaining more in return. So your return is better than what it was,
Exactly. And you know what? I think it's great to diversify, have a few different assets, but from my experience and through also relationships and company that I've kept previously, the volatility on other sort of investments is much higher. You have no control, and you're really at the mercy of, whatever's happening with the current stock exchange and so forth. So
Yeah.
I think you need to be cognizant of the fact that if you want to invest in property, know that you'll be in it for the long term, unless there is a major capital growth happening in a certain area that you can make a quick buck. But I would say there's never or rarely been cases where people have lost money unless there have been some sort of government building happen next door or something which has really obstructed the purchase. So I would say do your research and find out if any of those things are happening around your property. Another thing is check out your developers, because check out the quality, the workmanship, etc. Because yeah, that's something that's very important and that people could sort of get misled by.
Exactly. I mean, on all our previous shows, we talk about having like a great team within investing in property. And I know you've done a lot of your own research, which is what first-time home buyers, actually, we're supposed to do this before we even, because there's terminologies, there's jargon that we don't really understand. So doing your own research, and the tax thing, that is my biggest fear. Like the whole, like, I just can't do the tax thing. And on the topic of, you said one of the most important things was knowing where to buy. So what questions does Bianca Da Silva ask herself before she buys? So how do you know where exactly to buy?
So I would look at the growth in the area. So how the properties have, the prices that they've sold at sort of within a 6 month to a year sort of time frame or even longer. And, see the trajectory in terms of, are the values increasing or not? If the values are increasing, then I know, okay, that's a good capital growth area. Other times it takes other things happening in the area. So for example, if there's a school being built or a big shopping center coming up, then I know that, okay, the area around it's going to be, growing substantially. A good example is close to Midrand, where Mall of Africa is. Sorry, the area just slipped my mind for some reason. That
Yeah.
area is something that I foresaw as a good opportunity because I saw a lot of the office blocks going up, etc. So truth be told, there's development after development going up. So, you have to sort of look at those things. Another thing that I look at when purchasing is, so if Bianca Da Silva was not to live in this property and I had to rent it out, what is my rental return on this property? And I ensure that the rental return is significantly good enough that if there is a bond repayment, it's well enough covered, and maybe the levies as well, which I've actually managed to secure with the properties that I've purchased. So
right, and you're not the first guest to talk about the Midrand area and all the up and coming buildings, especially with first-time home buyers, because a lot of the apartments or the new developments in Midrand are very modern. And to invest in something that's extremely modernized, there's not a lot of flipping or refurbishing that first-time home buyers need to do, which is amazing. And you spoke about having not having a lot of money and asking a lot of questions. So what was your savings plan like? Let's think back to when you bought your first property. What was that like? What was your savings plan? What steps did you take to ensure that you could afford your first big investment?
Luckily, at the time, I had, I wouldn't say a substantial amount of money, but a healthy amount of savings, which I was able to put into 2 properties. So I actually split the amounts. I calculated what I would afford, say, for example, a 2 million rand property here and a 1 million rand property there. And I looked at, okay, I would probably afford a 80% loan to value ratio. What was the difference? And then split the amounts into those 2 properties and paid the deposits and got 2 for 1. If I could say that, for that one sort of savings pocket. So other than that, I'd ensure that I did not use all the savings, because you still want peace of mind at the end of the day and some sort of cash flow if you need it for emergencies, etc. I would say that if you're not able to accumulate a substantial amount of savings, there are banks, to my knowledge, that are granting 100% bonds. If not, there's opportunities of you first purchasing one property, maybe at a 90% loan to value ratio. And then once capital growth occurs in that property, you utilize the capital earned on that property to fund the next one.
Exactly. And a lot of viewers in the past most of us have either just graduated and we're looking to purchase property immediately. And just last week, we spoke to a young lady that bought her first at the age of 22. And age is not really a thing in this game. And like you said, neither is having a lump sum of capital. You just need to figure out your savings plan and know, like I guess you were lucky in that way to split it between two properties instead of just, you could have invested in one. But we need to think a little bit further. You need to think outside the box. And you got two with your savings plan. And how long did it take you to save up for this before you made your first purchase?
Probably about 2 years.
Okay, so, and I think a lot of us while studying, that's when we should start saving up, so that as soon as you graduate, you don't jump straight into renting. You can actually purchase your first home, live in it, and then while doing that, purchase another property that you rent out, and you see your returns, like you spoke about earlier. Now, back to your first experience of purchasing your first home, was there any obstacles or mistakes that you made that you look back now and you do what we do? We're like, if only someone told us.
Yes. So I was lucky enough that the development went ahead, but to my knowledge, later down the line, there was a sort of a contingency in place which stated that the development would only proceed based on 70% sell-through. And so if the sell-through wasn't achieved, then the deposit, I would have lost my deposit. So that's something that a lot of developers do stipulate in their contracts. So it's very important to read your contracts carefully and make sure that you're not getting into a situation where you are, at the mercy of the developer selling further units.
So I guess what you would do different is really just read those clauses, those terms and conditions. Just again, like you said, do your own research. Now, on the note of doing your own research, Bianca,
take the document to an attorney or financial advisor to read through, definitely.
Exactly. And now that you've gone through that, you know that every time you make another big investment, you definitely won't take, especially the legal part of it. I think first-time home buyers should not take that into their own hands. That's something that you definitely give to,
100%. And so, one other thing I can add that I think may help a lot of people is another development which I purchased in a clause that I amended in the contract myself was based on my experience from my first purchase, was that the developer handed over the keys before the property was livable, in any livable condition. The lift was not working. The a thoroughfare was messy. There were painters, all day. So it wasn't really a livable condition. So something that I stipulated in my next property was that occupation will only take place on transfer. Hence, I wouldn't be liable for any occupational rent if the developer wants to hand me keys. Because in the first property instance, I had to pay something close to 100,000 Rand in occupational rent when the property wasn't livable.
Yeah. See, this was amazing that we could actually hear your experiences, what you went through, and now we know what to look out for as first-time investors. And you talk about the developer, and I want to take it back to what if we, as a first-time home buyer, we talk to the seller, and there are certain questions that we need to ask the seller. And even in a situation of renting, so in my case, I'm currently renting. So there were certain things that I should have asked the landlord or even the estate agent that showed me the property. Certain questions, that like cannot give me a heartache down the line. So why did the previous tenants move? How are the neighbors? I asked none of these. And I think that first time people who are renting or home buyers, we have the right to ask these questions. We're paying money. So what would you ask a seller before investing in your first big property? Yeah.
I think it's very important to know what the rates and levies and that are. I mean, because that sometimes can financially be detrimental to you if you're not prepared, with such a certain amount of rates or levies. In the instance that I'm talking about, there was a certain property which was a great investment, but The levies every month were over 12,000 Rand based on the lift and other sort of things that they had happening in the building, which were obviously the responsibility of the body corporate. So that's something that I think is quite important.
Yeah, and also, why are they selling? And I'm sure there's a lot of questions, but
those are definitely standard, but I have not really been in that position to ask those kind of questions, because whenever I've bought, it's always been, well, mainly off plan, so new developments, and it's always been in a time where property is selling like hotcakes and capital growth is mad. So in the instance that I'm talking is based on purchasing property in Cape Town. So
yeah.
at the time, Cape Town, I think within the year that I purchased, my property gained about almost 700,000 Rand in value in terms of the market value. And so I wasn't in a position to ask those questions, but definitely I do think that it is wise to ask why you are selling, about the neighbors, about maybe the buildings in the area, the crime, the safety, the noise. There's many things that you can ask. That
Exactly.
Definitely.
Yeah, and you briefly spoke about terms and conditions and clauses that we miss, especially as first-time investors, in whatever the property may be. And you spoke about adding your own clause, right, earlier. And I had no idea that we could do that as first-time investors. So I just wanted to find out, was there any other clauses or terms and conditions you missed as Bianca, or have you always been able to give it to a lawyer or to a legal party to read and explain it for you?
I'm actually finishing my law degree. So luckily enough, I was able to read it myself. But with that said, I'm not yet qualified, but so I would suggest to take it to your lawyer. There's many things that you can get caught up in terms of fees that are maybe at an astronomical rate, maybe the estate agency commission that the developers agreed with the specific estate agency. You can always negotiate that. People are not aware of the fact that many things in the contract are negotiable. It's not set in stone. So you are, and as I did, you can, within sort of respect, cross out what you feel is not applicable to you and what you would like to amend. And then obviously it's at the discretion of the developer or the seller to feedback to you.
That's definitely something that first-time investors need to be aware of, that we are allowed to change and make changes. I mean, like I said earlier, we're investing, we're putting down a lump sum. This eventually it becomes ours, it's yours. So whatever clauses and terms and conditions that you would like, it's your property. You're able to do whatever you'd like there, right?
100%. And I'd also advise, if it is your first time purchasing, and this is something that I wish I had known back then when purchasing my second property actually, was if you're not sure about the developer and you would like to ensure that you are safe on all sides, I would suggest that instead of paying your deposit, because they are very, very ruthless when it comes to requesting a deposit, otherwise they will not reserve a unit, etc. So when it comes to paying a deposit, I'd suggest that you speak to your bank and you get a bank guarantee letter, and that forms as a guarantee for your deposit, so that you save, should the transfer not go through or the bond not get approved, you do not lose your money or your deposit.
Right. You'd rather be safe than sorry in this game. Bianca, we're going to quickly run to an ad break and we'll be back. To our viewers at home, let us know, were there any obstacles or mistakes that you made when purchasing your first investment or buying your first home? Let us know in the comment section below and we'll read all about it towards the end of the show. Thank you, Bianca. Quick ad break. We'll be back shortly. Welcome back. Thank you to our viewers who have shared their comments, shared their questions with us this evening. I'm going to jump straight into one. This is, so Martha Shingange is saying, this is just some love, I guess. I love these podcasts. It helps some of us correct mistakes that we've made previously, not just for first-time home buyers. I still learn a lot from these shows. So thank you, Bianca. You know, even though we've invested before, I think we learn every day. Every day there's certain things that we look back at and we're like, even when investing, I mean, you've almost reached your property portfolio goal, which we'll get to later. And there's certain things that you see that you've done this before and you know how to rectify it. And what are these things? What are some of the things that we need to bear in mind? Let's talk about things you wish, as Bianca, you wish you knew before investing in property.
I wish I knew that the estate agent's commission is negotiable and practically everything else is negotiable. As I said previously, that not everything's set in stone. I wish I knew that, you know, there is a thing called the Consumer Protection Act that protects us as buyers not to be taken advantage of. And, you know, there's definitely, you know, legal sort of remedies that people can utilize if they feel that they are being prejudiced, because sometimes there are unfortunately cases where, you know, you're bullied by your developer or your seller or whatever the case may be. So there are those important aspects to consider, and that you as a buyer are empowered and you are informed, and ensure that you are around the right people to empower you as an individual as well and keep you informed of what's going on in terms of property, and just feed yourself with knowledge.
Yeah, and even if it's, you know, like you keep saying, even if it's to go study law, so that, you know, you're more in the right frame of mind to know, and it's great to know these acts and to know that you do have a say as the buyer. Also news to me, which we need to talk about a little bit later, maybe not tonight because of time. Bianca, you spoke about financial freedom as one of your motivations or one of your goals for investing in property. Is there anything else for achieving your property goal? What was your main motivation for this?
You know what, when I was empowered in terms of, I became more informed on how property can become even more lucrative than what I thought in terms of tax breaks. So there's certain tax breaks that you can obtain if you own 5 properties off plan, where you get, correct me if I'm wrong, but 33 or so % tax rebate back from the government. So there's things like that can empower you as an individual to, you know, really invest in property, because you will get, you know, the tax rebates back. Furthermore, if you're purchasing property, you don't have to purchase in your own name. If you have an entity and can, you know, show that you will have income coming into that entity. If you have a PTY, a private company that owns property, it can really work for you, as you can legally set off expenses on that property.
Yeah, and if anything happens, if any obstacles, I mean, like I said, you building your property portfolio, you've invested in many more after your first big investment. If anything happens, maybe a similar mistake or an obstacle that comes in the way, do you have a contingency plan? If so, what is it?
My contingency plan, I wouldn't say I have maybe a solid contingency plan, but I would say through purchasing through different structures, as well as purchasing in different areas, I'm well secure, and I'm diverse in terms of my investments. So I feel like that is actually my contingency plan.
Right, that you basically covered all your bases. So if anything happens, and you spoke about developers who have tried to take advantage. What other mistakes have you come across when investing? So
when I purchased initially, I paid, you know, the actually more than 10% deposit. I paid the bond shortfall upfront in full. And what happened was the developer, there was some sort of financial disturbances within that company, and I think they were going through a bit of a difficult time, and so the development was not going to go ahead and going to be proceeded with. And so what happened was I got a legal letter stating that my deposit was not due to me any longer, as I signed a contract and it's null and void because the companies, I think they were liquidating. Anyway, long story short, I had to get attorneys involved and eventually got a portion of my money back. But then again, the mistake was not at that time reading the contract properly. So I just think make sure that you read the fine print carefully, and that, again, as I said, if there's anything that you're unsure about, speak to your attorney or your financial advisor, and speak to someone that has your best interest at heart, because sometimes the seller and the agent just wants to make the sale, and they'll tell you anything. With all due respect to agents, I love them, and developers and sellers, but they obviously want to make the commission or the sale, and so they would tell you what they think you want to hear.
I mean, besides all the mistakes, and we need to make mistakes in order to grow. So some mistakes are really good mistakes, because we then learn how to rectify them, and we then know what procedures to take in the future if it happens again. Would you say that, looking back now at all your investments, would you say that there are any disadvantages of investing in property?
So one disadvantage, which to me isn't a disadvantage, but I think others would think it's a disadvantage, would be that your money is not as quickly liquid if you need it. So that's why I'm saying have a contingency plan in terms of other cash liquid money. If you need an emergency, don't go sell your property to pay for an emergency.
Right, and I think my next question is probably going to require way too much time, but we can cut it a little bit short. So what are the advantages for you? What advantages have you experienced over the years since you've invested in property?
My money works for me. My tenants pay my bonds. I don't put or rarely put any money back into the property because it is fully liquid, and I'm cash positive from day one. So in this way, I have my assets growing not only on a yearly basis, but I've got the capital growth taking into account, which means that my assets are growing in value and my financial freedom is very, very close.
Right, and I think that answers my next question, which was literally going to be, what keeps you motivated to keep, like you said, you're growing your property portfolio. By the end of 2020, you'll have your required amount or your required goal. What is your goal, Bianca? What is your goal for the end of 2020 within the property spectrum?
Six properties in South Africa, and my first global property in the UK.
Amazing. And I think, the global property, also a chat for another day. And Bianca, you keep doing great things. And I love that you're building your property portfolio as well as, and you're doing all of this while still building yourself as Bianca. And I think besides the property goal, my final question, just because of time, is, do you have any regrets?
No. I would advise that is passionate about property, or even if you're not passionate about property, get into property sooner rather than later. Do your research, ensure you're investing in good areas that have good capital growth and that your return on investment is sound, and you will not look back because your money will work for you if you're well informed.
Exactly. And I think, like you kept saying, make sure you do your own research, and also, most importantly, know exactly what you're putting your money in. And within property, keep remembering, especially as first-time home buyers, and I've heard you punt this a lot throughout this evening's live, is it's for the long run. So be more sure that this is a long-term goal rather than quick money. And like you said, your money works for you. I just have a quick comment from Valerie. Valerie Monroe is saying, I love how commission to agents always gets crossed out and negotiated. That's just a comment from Valerie. So as you can hear, would you like to comment on that?
Hi, Valerie. Well, my comment is that everything is negotiated in business. So I think you need to empower yourself as a buyer to make the right decisions. And at the end of the day, you need to look after your own pocket so that you've got more liquid cash to put into other investments.
Exactly. Thank you so much, Bianca. Unfortunately, that's all we have time for today. And I really appreciate that you could take time out of your busy day and also just look back at how you experienced purchasing property. And from what I've heard this evening, it's only positives. And you've really inspired me to invest in property, because I love how you started off. It's a myth. You don't need to be rich to do this. Just create a savings plan that works for you. Do you have any last words?
Just go for it. Start today. That's all I can say. And the world is yours. There's really no limit as to, you know, how many properties you can own or what you can grow if you savvy with your money and, you know, you make it work for you. So definitely invest.
And do your research. Very important. So thank you so much, Bianca. We'll chat soon. Thank you to those who have watched and those who have commented. We really appreciate your comments week after week. This was the First Time Home Buyer Show. And we'll see you guys next week, same time, same place. Have a good weekend and stay safe.
Hi, I'm Cornita Bobs. I'm a BCom student at Stellenbosch University. I currently live in Valgevonden Estate and I absolutely love this area. Historically, Stellenbosch is known as a student town. It offers an incredibly peaceful lifestyle and the people around town are always welcoming and friendly. Because it's a small town, there's an amazing community vibe with some really authentic coffee shops and restaurants. The trees along Victoria Street create a beautiful environment to be in, and it's really cool for students passing through campus. There's some excellent boys and girls schools in the area. Our town has such a rich history, but at the same time it's really modern, and you'll find some amazing art installations all around. The sunrises and sunsets are some of the best in the world. It's the most beautiful place to call home. I've lived here for the past 5 years, and it's been an unforgettable experience. And this is my neighborhood.